We're a couple of minutes late in getting started, and that's good old technology. So apologies about that. Welcome, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lisa McElvenna. I'm the Deputy MD here at Business in the Community, and this is the first of a three-part session, which is all aimed at untangling social value. Social value is being talked about a lot. It's been around for a while, and it has grown in terms of what it means to us and to many of our member organisations and our non-members. But really, for us, with it, at the risk of kind of oversimplifying it, whenever we think about social value from a business and community perspective, we're really thinking about responsible business with a different name and through a different lens. So we're thinking about how organisations can think about the positive impacts they can have in the communities in which they're working, how they can have a positive impact on the environment, how they can have a positive impact on the people that they currently employ or could be employing. And that's what we want to talk about today. Today has been brought together, sounds like a TV show, today's been brought together by Greta, who is really the engine behind all of this. And I'll hand over to her now to take you through what you can expect from today and from the series more generally. And I'll pop on towards the end just to pick up on some more business in the community information. But for now, over to Greta, who will introduce the agenda, our speakers, who I'm really looking forward to hearing from today, and take you through what we have coming up.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, and thanks everyone for joining today and holding on while we work through our technical issues, as everyone does these days. So today we're going to be hearing from the Strategic Investment Board, from Esther Barnes, she's a social value advisor, and from Jen McCusker from the Belfast City Council as the Economic Development Officer. And then we're going to be hearing again from Lisa, which just gave us the introduction. She's the Deputy Managing Director for BITCNI, just about the opportunities at business in the community. So today we're going to be hearing about what social value is, why it's important, and why it's come up specifically with, from our Ireland perspective. And it's a series in 3 parts. So today's the first series. We'll be going through kind of the beginning of it, what it is, why it's important. And we'll have 2 more sessions next Tuesday and the Tuesday afterwards, both at 11 a.m. We're going to be covering application support, again, hearing from the SAB and BCC next Tuesday, and also hearing from one of our fantastic members, version 1, and all the work that they have been doing and will keep doing, which is fantastic. And then finally, in part 3, we're going to get a little bit of a future perspective. What happens next? You've delivered a project. How does reporting work? And we're going to be hearing from Brendan Gallagher from Atkins Realis and Karen Rogers. So I'm now going to pass over to Esther from the SIB. Esther, take it away.
Great, thanks very much, Greta. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen here. I have a few slides just to go through with you as well. I love this technology that I use all the time and don't seem to ever get right first time. So hopefully you are able to see my slideshow there. So yeah, my name is Esther.
Sorry, Esther. We're looking at your Teams at the moment.
Oh, right. Sorry. See, it never works first time. It's guaranteed. And yeah, is that now?
Yeah, perfect.
Great, thanks very much. So my name is Esther Barnes and I'm a social value advisor with the Strategic Investment Board, and my colleague Andrea MacLean is also on the call, and she'll be able to answer any questions in the chat. We're both social value advisors. I work mainly with the construction industry and Andrea with IT, but we do work also with service suppliers as well. Strategic Investment Board really has been tasked with delivering social value and the models for social value for all of the government departments and their arm's length bodies. So we work with all of those organisations to ensure that they include social value on their supplier contracts, and also looking then at the contract management with them. And we run the monitoring system where all of the social value and all of the initiatives and everything that's being delivered is captured, and we report on that back to central government as well as the individual departments. So what is social value? This is what we're here to look at today. So social value refers to the wider financial and non-financial impacts of the well-being of individuals, communities and the environment. It's really about the work that we do with the departments. It's about maximising their buying power. So Northern Ireland government spends over £3 billion per annum, and it's really about getting the maximum value for money of that to benefit the people, the communities and the planet. It's additional to business as usual. So a lot of companies that we're working with and suppliers have really good corporate social responsibility and things that they do already. But it's about looking at what can we drive through these contracts that gives us additionality and more benefits for, as I said, those individuals, communities and the environment. And that's about the social value. The focus that we have is what is delivered specifically due to the award of those government contracts. So as we've heard, social value isn't new. It's been around in public procurement from around 2008. It became mandatory in 2016 with a note model that we delivered, which if any of you have been delivering this before, the bi-social model, which was really around recruitment of people who were long-term unemployed and education leavers and work experience, but it's got a lot wider in the past couple of years. And it now is really at the heart of public procurement landscape in Northern Ireland. And that's specifically to do with this public policy note around scoring social value and the widening of the types of initiatives that we are looking for suppliers to deliver in addition to that sort of employment piece. Some of the examples of things that you might find in public contracts are things like the pro bono professional advice that organisations can give to the voluntary community and social enterprise sector. Employment opportunities are still very much at the heart of what we're doing because a lot of our bigger contracts in particular offer really good opportunities for people who are long-term unemployed or very little experience in the labour market to get them into employment. But it also goes a lot wider now, looking at modern slavery and human rights diligence, looking at the inclusion of social enterprises and micro enterprises in supply chains, looks at environmental protection as well and how we can make improvements and those types of initiatives around reducing carbon emissions. Looks at also then the contract workforce. So looking at their health and well-being, their mental health, their physical health, but also their career progression and how they're supported with their skills and progression within their jobs. It looks at offering training opportunities and work experience and also ensuring, as I said, the work progression and skills development of the contract workforce. So some of those are examples. Whenever we look at these, we always are looking very much at the black and white, and I will talk to how we score the social value and how you're expected to kind of include that in the tender. But I think it's really important that we look at some examples of it in real life to kind of bring it to bring a bit of life to it. So I have here a short video which gives some examples of social value that has been delivered recently in contracts and shows the sort of the variety of things that can be delivered. And I'm hoping my technology is going to work and the audio come through for you.
There's no audio yet, Esther.
There's no audio? Yes.
No.
Sorry, I'm used to using Teams, so I usually have the opportunity to do this. Sorry. Are we good on?
Yep, perfect.
The Northern Ireland government has
Sorry about that.
substantial buying power, and social value is now at the heart of the public procurement process. This presents opportunities for suppliers and local communities to make the most of investment while delivering real, lasting social benefits. So, what kind of benefits? Jobs and work experience, skills and education opportunities, purchasing from a social enterprise, promoting human rights, reducing carbon emissions, or delivering health and well-being initiatives. In this film, you'll see examples of social value in procurement put into action, and most importantly, the difference it can make. After winning the Department of Finance's Digital Resources contract, Version 1 delivered their social value commitment by working with Cedar Foundation to provide training to people with a disability, ultimately aiming to create career pathways into the IT industry.
The Cedar Foundation is a voluntary organisation. I've been working in Northern Ireland for over 80 years. It's an inclusive society for all, and our mission is to support people with disabilities to live the lives they choose. It was great whenever we were actually called by version 1 through the social value contact that we have a profile that we put up on their site. We were very impressed with the approach that they took from the off in terms of having a dialogue and open discussion around how things would work best and what adjustments would need to be made, and they were quite open to chatting with our service users about that.
The reason we ended up working with Cedar was because they had registered on the social value broker site. So I was sort of cold calling community groups, chatting away to them. But Cedar were the ones that had the kind of network and support that could make this program meaningful. So what we have to offer in version 1 is very, very light touch. It's skills, it's a weekly engagement, but an organisation like Cedar, who has support networks, who has systems for supporting people through college into their next steps in employability, that's exactly the kind of people who can make use of our resources in a way that not everybody has the infrastructure to support.
Well, it's made a lot of difference because it made me look at things that I didn't know before. Doubts either them going to employ me because I'm disabled, and then to totally turn it around. She made me think of positives, not negatives. Because I thought IT wouldn't be a job for me, but it is a job for me, hopefully.
Barron's is using its social value commitment to provide work experience, on-the-job training, and ultimately create employment.
So we're currently working alongside TransLink, delivering the new Belfast transport hub, and our role here is to support them with the delivery of social value. So with social value, we're able to offer employment opportunities, we're able to tackle the skill shortage that exists within our industries, and then we can also widen participation through our outreach programs. And this will hopefully inspire the next generation and those that maybe feel they're sitting in positions where they're facing barriers to employment to have an opportunity to grow within the construction industry. Marcus came to us when he was at a crossroads in making a career decision, and he came in to do some work experience, and through that work experience it gave him the confidence in making the decision to go down the apprenticeship route.
Yeah, so after the 3-week work experience I went to apply through Work Plus, which then I got the offer from Barron's and came on to this job here at Belfast Transport Hub. After doing that work experience, that's what pushed me to go for the civil engineering apprenticeship. So the level 5 apprenticeship I'm doing at the minute, working with the people I'm working with in the Belfast Met and on site, it's given me the confidence to go forward and push on to do the bachelor's degree and then hopefully chartership when the time comes to do it.
When Stewart's Commercial Vehicles won a contract to maintain vehicles for the Northern Health and Social Care Trust, it engaged with Social Enterprise Mugshots to deliver branded uniforms and merchandise.
Mugshots is a small print and design workshop, and we are in Hyde Bank Wood College. We work with young offenders every year to deliver a qualification on their employability skills, but any profits that we make through generating income from any business possible sits in our bursary fund, and that bursary fund goes on to support them once they are released from jail. We need, the support from the social value policy to increase that support that we can offer and continue their rehabilitation journey. So a really good example of the social value policy in act is a recent order that we completed for Stewart's Commercials. The guys got work experience from this, and then the bursary was topped up from the profits made from this order, all of which then goes on to support the boys upon release.
Feel a lot better towards the future, to be honest with you. As a few years ago, this year I would have laughed at if someone said to me I would be in the position I am now, whereas I have stuff to look forward to. I get up in the morning, there's a healthy routine, and I'm giving back to the people that maybe once I wasn't given to, but I feel great overall about it.
Stewart Commercials tendered for the vehicle repair and maintenance of the Northern Health and Social Care Trust. We were aware as part of the tendering process that we had a social value clause that we had to fulfil. From giving mugshots our initial requirement, the whole process was simple and straightforward. Julie contacted me with various options we had available. The uniforms were hand delivered to the workshop. It was the most simple and straightforward process I have dealt with in business in a long time.
Social value shows how the public, private and third sectors can work together to build ethical, resilient supply chains, to deliver on zero carbon and sustainability goals, to promote well-being and inclusivity, to make change happen. Because change starts with us.
Okay, so I always like to sort of show that that video because it shows, even though there's only 3 examples there, it shows the wide range of initiatives and the impact that they have on people's lives. And that's the real driver behind social value, and why the government departments and the suppliers as well really want to work together to make that change. Okay, so I referenced earlier this PPN, so Procurement Policy Note 0121, and this is where there was a real sea change around social value in government purchasing. What it did was it mandated from the 1st of June 2022 that social value was going to be scored at a minimum of 10% whenever tenders were being evaluated. But previously we had it in as contract conditions, and it was all really around employment. But what this is looking to do is put a real focus and a weighting on social value, just to show, to sort of highlight how important it is to those public bodies. So where that kicks in really is above threshold contracts. So for construction, that's around 5.3 million. And for services contracts, it's a lot lower. It's £137,000. So once you reach those sort of thresholds on the contract value, social value will be scored. Now, it's where appropriate, public bodies can score below those thresholds. So you might find that there are contracts that go out below that threshold where they choose to score, or they can choose to weight greater than the 10%. But that's what's mandatory, is those thresholds and the scoring at 10%. The PPN sets out that social value is going to be scored under 4 themes, and we'll have a look at those themes later on. But just wanted to highlight some of the other requirements within the procurement policy note. So contracting authorities are also required to consider the potential to reserve contracts. So that's looking at a contract or part of a contract that can be reserved for those organisations that have a social purpose. So for example, reserving contracts for social enterprises, and that's in order to give them the opportunity to sort of to compete with they maybe haven't done that in public procurement against private sector companies before. It also looks at mandatory fair work requirements. So if you're tendering, you may find that those requirements around fair work and living wage are in there as part of the conditions of contract. There's some other public procurement notes that we also consider when looking at social value. So human rights, supply chain resilience, and the procurement of social and other specific services. So as I said, social value is scored under 4 themes. First theme is increasing secure employment and skills. So it's taken the work that had already been done in the previous years around employing people who were long-term unemployed and people who were leaving education or training, apprentices, etc., and really sort of expands on that. So what it's looking to do is, again, still creating employment opportunities and training opportunities, but also looking at contributing to in-work progression and skills development for those people who are working on the contract, looking at opportunities for entrepreneurs and supporting economic growth. So how can we work with the likes of the VCSE sector to support them? Second theme is building ethical and resilient supply chains. So this theme aims to tackle employment inequality, reduce the risk of modern slavery and human rights abuses within the supply chains, and to promote diverse and secure supply chains. Third theme is all around delivering zero carbon. So a lot of the sort of the zero carbon agenda is addressed through the specification and looking at what's being purchased. But this theme within social value is looking at those incremental other things that we can do in order to address the agenda. So looking at environmental benefits, influencing environmental protection and improvement, and working towards zero greenhouse gas emissions. And the final theme then is about promoting well-being. So looking at the health and well-being of the contract workforce, tackling employment inequality, contributing to the progression and skills development, and looking at community integration. So social value, in sort of practical terms then, whenever you're looking at tendering for these contracts, it's really important that we have a common language around what social value is and what the expectations are of the contracting authority. So it's important that we sort of tease out what comes under those themes. And to that end, each of the themes has been aligned with a number of indicators. So this is just an example from theme 1, increasing secure employment skills. And you can see there's a second tier there that includes a number of indicators. This is just a snapshot of them. So there's only 1.1 and 1.7. There's obviously a full range of those indicators, but it's about putting a bit more sort of flesh on the bones and teasing out what exactly can be delivered under that theme. Within the points-based approach, which I'm going to have a look at in a moment, we've gone a step further and looked at the initiatives that sit under those indicators. So those initiatives are really the physical things that a supplier can do in order to deliver social value. So things like paid employment opportunities, work placements, skills development and educational attainment, etc. So those are the actual physical things that you would be delivering as part of the contract. There's 2 models for social value, and I'm going to sort of touch on both of these. So the main model that we would see used in vast majority of contracts would be the social value points based approach, which I'll talk to in a moment. And it's really the default approach for services and IT contracts over 250k, and it's used in all construction contracts and construction related professional services. There is also an alternative approach, which you may find used on much smaller contracts or contracts that have special characteristics or are a very short duration. And again, I'll talk to that model. It's important to sort of note that while we go through these 2 models, and there's a lot of guidance on our website in terms of how these are included in procurement and how you as a supplier can tender using these models, these approaches are not mandatory. So you may find that contracting authorities have the opportunity to score social value in a different way, but they have been used in the vast majority of contracts that we have seen going out. So the PPN is mandatory. It's mandatory to score social value at 10% over those thresholds, but these approaches are there for guidance, but we have found that they've been used in the vast majority of contracts. And both those approaches are based on those 4 social value themes, and they both address the indicators under those themes. The social value points approach also looks at the initiatives that sit under that. So the social value points approach, what it does is it sets a target of a number of social value points that have to be delivered within a contract. And that target is based on 100 social value points per £1 million of contract value and pro rata. So if you have a £5 million contract that you are tendering for, you'll find that if they're using this approach, you'll have a target of 500 points to deliver. Each of the social value initiatives has been allocated a number of points, and they're all already weighted within the tender documentation. And I'll bring up a copy of a social value delivery plan in a moment. But what it does is it sets out how much of each of those things you have to do in order to earn those points, so to speak. So for example, 52 weeks of employment for someone who's long-term unemployed would get you 75 points in some of the models. So it sets out exactly how much of each thing you have to do in order to earn the points. There is a lot of flexibility within this approach. So previously, as I said, it was all about employment. And the supplier within this approach has the flexibility to choose which of the initiatives they deliver. So it allows you to look at the contract that you're delivering, what the contracting authority's priorities are, what works for you and your workforce, or the things within your own staff that you want to address around mental health and well-being, etc. Are there things that you want to deliver within the communities or social enterprises that you want to work with in order to deliver contracts? So there's a whole range of initiatives in there that you can have a look at and choose which of those that you want to deliver. Once you put together your social value delivery plan, then based on those initiatives, as long as you're meeting that target, so the example of the 500 points, as long as you're meeting that target, then that's your social value delivery plan set out. So it kind of levels the playing field so that you can't have larger suppliers coming in and over-promising a larger number of points and getting more points for it. The social value delivery plan itself is not scored. It's a qualitative assessment of your methodology, so how you're going to deliver social value rather than what you're going to deliver. I have said there's a lot of flexibility. However, it's always important to check if you are filling out the information around a tender on this, that the contracting authority may set out a minimum target for things that they really want to achieve. So for example, they may identify priority groups within their tender documentation. So for example, Department of Justice might want you to work with organisations who are working with people with an offending background, and they might set that as a priority group and then request that, for example, 20% of the points have to be delivered to those priority groups. So it's always really important to ensure that your social value delivery plan reflects any of those sort of minimum or maximum mandatory requirements that the contracting authority may have put in there. This is just a snapshot from the tender documentation, and just shows you how that looks within the actual documentation. So there is a social value points matrix that sets out each of the themes. So this is an example from theme 1, secure employment and skills. It'll set down the side then which of the indicators this theme is sort of aimed at. And then it sets out those initiatives. So you'll see here, for example, work placements. If you offer 4 weeks full-time equivalent work placements, for people who are considered disadvantaged in the labour market, that's worth 10 points. If you're doing that for someone who is within the contracting authority's priority groups, it's worth 15 points. So it sets it all out, and you can see immediately then how much of each thing you have to deliver in order to get in order to earn those points. And the procurement documents will set out the supplier guidance as well. So you'll be able to see what the eligibility requirements are. So for example, people considered disadvantaged in the labour market will include things like people who are long-term unemployed, people who have left education or training recently within the last 12 months. And it'll set out then the contracting authority's priority groups. So for example, people with an offending background, young people on the looked after care register, etc. So depending on the contracting authority, they might have different priority groups. This then is the social value delivery plan. So if the contracting authority is using the points-based approach, you will have 2 pieces of information to return relating to social value within your tender documentation. First piece is this social value delivery plan, and it's basically that social value points matrix set out in an Excel spreadsheet. Andrea will be going in the next session into a bit more detail around the resources that we have. There is a webinar on our website that talks you through how to complete a social value delivery plan. But basically what you're doing is just populating the spreadsheet with your social value offering. So in this example, the supplier has put in that they're going to deliver 832 weeks of paid employment for people who face barriers to employment. And the social value delivery plan will automatically calculate based on the points matrix, the value of that. So in this case, it's worth 1,200 points. So there is, it will automatically work out how many points you'll see in your social value delivery plan, what your target is. So in this example, they have to deliver 2,400 social value points. And as you're populating this, it will automatically tell you at the bottom how many points you've committed to so far. So you always have an eye on, am I meeting that minimum target? Because if you don't, in many cases within the tender process, you will actually be excluded if you fail to meet the minimum number of points within your social value delivery plan. As I said, there is an alternative approach. Now, this approach is slightly different in that it doesn't focus on social value points. So we don't look at those initiatives. What the contracting authority will do is if they choose to use the alternative approach because there are specific risks or opportunities within the contract that they want to address, they will go through the long list of themes and indicators, and they'll pick out usually between 1 and 3 indicators that they really want to focus on. And they will ask the suppliers to come back with a response indicating how they are going to achieve social value underneath those indicators, and set out again their methodology, how they're going to achieve that, and the steps that they're going to put in place to ensure that that is successfully delivered. That approach is usually used whenever you have a contract that is below 250,000 per annum. Not used a great deal in construction related services because they tend to stick to the points based approach, but it's something just to be aware of, that this alternative approach may be used on any contract. You could have one that's high value but short duration, so there could be a large amount of money has gone out through the actual sort of the materials required for that contract, and the contract itself is being delivered over a very short period of time. So the alternative approach may be appropriate in those kind of cases where it's not, there's not the time within the contract to go out and deliver the initiatives required to achieve the points. And sometimes, as I said, the contracting authority will use it if there's a really sort of pressing need to address a particular theme or indicator within a contract due to risks that they've identified in the delivery of that contract. So the evaluation then, as I said, whenever you're doing, if you're putting through tender documentation for one that has a points-based approach, you'll have that social value delivery plan. Both the points-based approach and the alternative approach require the supplier to put in a written response, this methodology, and that is the part that is scored, usually at the 10%. So those panel members who are assessing the social value, they will assess the social value response at a valuation stage, and they'll do that in exactly the same way as they'll do for any other evaluation criteria designed to address quality, so that you will have been given a sort of a scoring matrix, usually between 0 and 5, and it sets out what would score 0 if you haven't responded to the question at all, what would be poor, and score of 1, right through to an excellent response at 5, and that addresses all the points and gives great confidence it can be delivered. That's, as it says there, is the part that is scored at the 10%. But as I've said, it's really important to ensure that if they're using the points-based approach and you have a social value delivery plan, that you meet the minimum number of points, because if you don't, your tender could be rejected. So tender's response, again, this is really a sort of guidance that we put out there for the procurement teams. It usually looks like this. 99.9% of the ones that I've seen will look exactly like this, but it's really important to ensure that you obviously sort of look at the tender documentation and ensure that you're answering the question that's being asked within the award criteria. As I said, normally looks like this. So what they'll be looking for is your timescales for delivery, what the resources are, both internal and external, that you're going to use in order to deliver your social value requirements. And that can include your own suppliers and your subcontractors, etc. It'll ask you to describe the activities you undertake to deliver the social value indicators, and set out and address what you've set out within your social value delivery plan. And that can include your key stakeholders, such as communities that you're going to be working with, organisations within the BCSE sector, etc. They're going to be looking for confirmation that the planned activities are additional to things that you already do. So I said right at the beginning, it's more than just your CSR. It's about, if I get this contract, what am I going to deliver specifically because I have this contract? So it's talking about that additionality. So if you already are doing things, it's about the additional things that you will do if you get this contract. So if your staff are volunteering 10 days a year and you then get this contract, and if you get this contract, they'll now do 15 days per year. It's about showing how you already have those processes in place, but there's going to be additionality driven through this contract. It also asks you to talk about how you will monitor and report on the delivery of social value and address any performance issues. We do have an online monitoring system, and if you are awarded a contract, you'll be signed up to that and you can do your monitoring through that. But you really need to show as well how you actually will ensure the successful delivery of this, and that there's people who have responsibility for this and oversight of it. So it's not just about the physical monitoring, it's about ensuring successful delivery. So as I said, in the second session, Andrea is going to be looking at the sort of the wealth of resources that we have available for suppliers. But just to highlight there that our website is socialvalueni.org if you want to have a look in the meantime at some of those resources that are available. And that is me for this morning. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Esther. We'll now head off to Janet with the Belfast City Council.
It's now my turn to explain that I'm really bad with technology, and this could take a wee minute.
That's good.
No, definitely not just you. Is that Sharon, Greta?
Yeah,
is that
that's
okay?
perfect. Thanks.
That's okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Janet McCusker. I work for Belfast City Council in our Economic Development Unit. And in true Northern Ireland style, the council also uses social value in the exact same way as sort of Esther had explained. It's really a policy instrument for us to maximise the positive outcomes and the positive impacts we can have for the money that we spend. However, we have a slightly different policy because we have slightly different strategic priorities within the council, and also slightly different target groups that we want to work with. So I'm going to explain a wee bit about the differences this morning. And if you put some questions in the chat, I can come back to you even after the session if I don't get a chance to do it while I'm presenting, if that's okay. Why anyone should be interested in what Belfast City Council does is we actually have an expenditure of about 110 million per annum. We buy across goods, services and works. We also have a capital bill project projects that are involved in that. We buy around 75 million pounds per annum of goods and services, and we have around 1,600 suppliers. And at any given time, we have sort of 350, 400 live contracts. One of the things that we're quite proud of is that about 50% of our spend is with SMEs and smaller companies within, and a lot of those are very local providers, and about 70% of the suppliers we use in totality are SMEs as well. And within kind of looking at the amount of money that we spend per annum, our elected members and committee were very interested in maximising essentially what the positive outcomes could be for social value. And within that, we have been using social value clauses, as they have been known, in council since around 2012. But in around 2019, there was a real push for us to look at how we could maximise what we were offering and ensure that we were impacting. So a bit like Esther had said around SIB's approach, that had been very much around employment creation for people who were out of work or people with disabilities, and it was primarily in our capital bills programmes. So we had engaged with a number of stakeholders, other councils throughout the UK and in the Republic as well. And we also spoke to external stakeholders such as SIB and a raft of local kind of stakeholders as well, to look at how we could change our policy to ensure that we were maximising what we were achieving through social value. Sorry. Oh, if it's not technology, your voice goes. That's the way that all presentations work. So within that, we also have, I had mentioned that we have slightly different strategic priorities. So we also work to support the government departments to deliver strategies like 10X strategy, but we also have our local community plan, the Belfast agenda, and within that, that lays out a number of strategic priorities which are unique to Belfast. Then we have another document called our Inclusive Growth Strategy, which essentially highlights groups within Belfast that are priorities for us to work with. This went out to consultation and was adopted in June 2022, and that was on a phased implementation plan. So we went live with kind of a pilot project then, and then in April of this year, it was fully implemented. And one of the kind of key differences is that we actually now apply social value on all tenders above £30,000. We have quite a volume of tenders, but we have quite a lot of smaller tenders as well. And it was really felt that actually social value should be garnered from as much spend as possible coming out of the council. In terms of, sorry, genuinely, my voice is going to give out. In terms of our expectations, it is similar, and we did develop this with SIB. So we have mandatory requirements, some discretionary requirements, and then we also have a social value offer and scoring process. And I'm going to bring you through sort of those three. And in terms of our mandatory requirements, again, it reflects a lot of what is done through the SIB approach. So we have in there that you will have to have policies around modern slavery and tackling modern slavery, prompt payment for suppliers, which helps to build resilience in our supply chains, that there will be payment of real living wage for anybody involved in the contract, and also we prohibit 0-hour contracts. We also have then discretionary requirements. So the person who is in charge of the actual procurement in council will make decisions around whether that's a reserved contract for social enterprises, if there will be additional ethical procurement and treatment of supply chain, or additional environmental policies, or additional human rights policies and procedures. It depends what we're buying, really. We tailor those because obviously if you're buying just pure goods, you probably want to you want to weight that towards environmental rather than human rights. But we kind of tailor them, and they're there for us to use. In terms of the social value offer, we do weight our social value, and we have two different weightings. So we will weight at 10% if cost is of a greater importance in that contract, and at 15% if cost is a lower importance in the contract. That is a decision that will be made before it goes out to the marketplace. So when that does go out, you will know if it's being scored at a 10% or at a 15% weighting. We do have points targets then that come in behind that, which is very similar to the SIB approach. And we do publish as well what our points will be. So there's a table on our website that gives you an idea of all our points. One of the things to mention within this is that you will notice that we have a longer list of initiatives, and that's because of our strategic priorities. So there will be things around employment, around social opportunities, environmental opportunities. Supporting SMEs is one of the, in supply chain is one of our kind of indicators, but additional indicators around policing and community safety initiatives, good relations initiatives, sport development. So anything that the council sees as a real policy area that we want to make a positive impact on the city, we're kind of looking through social value for suppliers to help us with that. Now it's a bidding process, so you can pick which kind of initiatives suit you better as a supplier, but it's just to let you know that it's a wider list than the SIB approach. Within that, you will then submit a spreadsheet that looks like this, which is our social value offer. Again, very similar to the social value delivery plan for SIB. It will keep a running track of your points, and it will let you know if you've hit the minimum, and you do need to hit the minimum. If you do not hit the minimum, you will score a 0 for this section. The other thing to mention is that we cap some of our initiatives. So for example, the use of social enterprises. We had some people coming back saying they would use 900 social enterprises in their supply chain, but for a contract that was maybe £30,000, that's not reasonable or achievable. So we cap it according to what we think is a reasonable or achievable target. And that's actually to make it fairer for smaller companies to compete with larger companies who may be able to engage with wider numbers. It's not on everything, but again, it will all be detailed in the tender documents and in the delivery plan, which you'll then follow up with. So the delivery plan, that is where we bring in that kind of scoring matrix, which Esther explained much better than I'm going to, because I'm going to just skim over it because Esther spoke about it. But essentially, it's where we make a decision on whether it's a 5, an excellent plan, a 4, that there's some reservations, and down to a 0 if there's been no return. Really around that, what we're looking for is that the methodology that you're proposing is acceptable and achievable. And if anything is deemed to be unacceptable, it is stripped out of the plan, so it will reduce down your points. And that's one of the things, slight difference in how council uses social value and SIB uses social value. So it's something to be aware of. We're really looking for the key word here is around things that are reasonable and achievable. We want social value to be something that actually is a tool that is used to garner as much positive impact as possible. And we are aware that people, through absolutely no malicious intent, are sometimes bidding on things at values that are just unachievable, just through lack of knowledge. So we're trying to support the sector by giving a wee bit more guidance in our documents around what might be achievable with some of those targets as well. And then we do have guidance. So we have a social value supplier guidance. It's not currently on the website because it's only just been developed, but we can share that with people, and we can share out a copy for anyone who would like one. If you can give me and send me an email, we can send that out, and that goes through all of this. I'm going to go through it a wee bit more in detail at the next session as well, so it might be as well to hold off until I go through what's in that, but there is guidance there as well. The other thing to mention is that we have essentially a pass mark for this. So getting the points, once it's scored, we actually require a 7 out of 10 if it's weighted at a 10%, and an 11 out of 15 if it's weighted at a 15. Again, that's just to ensure that there's a quality into the delivery that's there. One of the things I would say is this is new, and we've only really been, although social value has been run for a long time through the council, widening it out to companies that deliver goods and services, for example, and having that scored element is quite new. And if there's anything that you're unsure of, I would say to always get in contact with us, ask questions, and to seek feedback from tenders as well when you put them in, so that you know essentially what has happened, or if there's areas that you can strengthen up for the next time. In terms of that evaluation, we have a two-stage evaluation kind of for award. We have our social value points, which is that delivery plan where you kind of bid against the numbers, and then we will evaluate it, which again, I've mentioned, that's where we will look at whether it's acceptable or unacceptable. And this is sort of what it looks like on the back end of it. If it's unacceptable, that points do come out, but it's really, that's there to protect you in the long run as well, because if something is unachievable, we don't want people to then have penalties in the back end because they haven't been able to deliver things as well. In terms of that delivery piece, once it's awarded, again, because we recognise it's quite new, we have an 8 weeks post-award where we can have kind of discussions around the delivery plan and agree what's in there in totality. We also will be able to offer you some support from teams like the Employability and Skills team in Council, which can connect you through to academies or ways of engaging with people who are maybe further to reach in the labour market. Obviously, we also promote the use of the broker network through SIB, and our monitoring system is actually the SIB monitoring system. So all of our contracts will also be set up on their portal, and you will complete your monitoring through their monitoring system, and we will receive a report from SIB. Now, we may have additional verification requirements, such as visits to some of the interventions or some additional documentation, particularly if there's donations involved, but we will let you know about that, and that can be agreed again at that delivery plan stage. And then one of the things we're looking to do is we are a wee bit further back than Esther and Andrea and SIB. We don't have nice videos yet, but we are looking to do potentially some kind of PR and comms around this area for our suppliers and for the groups that they're working with, to showcase the good practice that is going on in this area. And then sort of coming to an end, we will kind of talk more about this in the resources network or resources session, but I thought it would be useful to talk about some tips for completing social value, and it really is putting the pieces together from everything that's been said today. I think one of the things I would say is, it seems very simple, but read the tender documents. Probably from listening to myself and Esther, you'll notice that although social value at a kind of policy level is very similar, actually how it is and how we kind of look for it can change from contract to contract and can vary depending on what is being bought. So it's really important to read your tender documents and to understand what is being required, and to even understand things like when we say priority groups, who we're talking about, because that'll make a difference on then what you can put into your delivery plan. And remember, it's now weighted, and give it adequate time when you're actually filling in your tender. It's, again, sounds easy, but because it's new, you can spend so much time on the quality return and maybe not leave as much time for social value as well. And then one of the things we would be kind of strongly promoting is to consider partners or brokers to help you to deliver, or even to develop your delivery plan. The guys, particularly in the VCSE sector, can often provide specialist and expert support and guidance on particularly reaching the kind of priority groups, but also around things like carbon reduction, environmental policies. These guys can really help with that as well. And do try to be realistic with what you put down. This isn't about putting down 3 times over the points value. It's about what you're actually seeing and you're using your points for being useful and helping us to achieve our strategic outcomes. And then again, I'm just going to reiterate the additionality piece. Sometimes services, particularly services that have a a social good to them already, people can write down in their return, well, we've offered 100 places on a sports development programme because that was what the tender was for. That isn't additional to the contract, and that won't get you any points. It has to be something additional to what you've already been asked to do through the contract, or additional to what you're already doing. And that seems really easy when I'm speaking about it now, but genuinely I have read people who have made that mistake due to the nature of what they're actually bidding for. In terms of support, we'll talk more about resources at the next session, but one thing I did want to highlight today is that we're actually running, this is the 4th in a series of events. Unfortunately, the other 3 have already happened, but we're going to try and have an annual kind of event schedule for supporting social value in the city, and we're running an event for businesses that have social value in their contracts to come and meet with VCSE organisations and look at how they can help to support social value and inclusive recruitment, etc. It's on the 19th of December, it's on in the morning and it's in the City Hall. So if you're interested in coming along to see, either to speak to some of the businesses or to connect through with some of the VCSE organisations, there's a link there that you can register to attend. But that's me, Greta. Not sure if there is any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. So we're now just going to head off with Lisa, and she's going to go through BITC really quickly. But if you can send any questions you have to my email, greta.dupino@bitcni.org.uk, we'll work with the speakers to get all the questions answered, and we'll have more time for question and answer over into the next session as well. So thank you very much. But over to Lisa.
Hi everyone. I'm very aware that we said we would try and finish up by 11, so I'm going to do my best to get us there in partnership with Greta and condense what I was going to say into 2 slides, pretty much. We have some BITC members on the call I see here, and some organisations that maybe aren't working with us in membership, and I just wanted to do a quick recap, because what we've heard today is some really, really helpful information on what it is that some of the big organisations, the likes of the council and so on, are trying to get through their social value requirements whenever they're putting out different tenders and opportunities. What I want to pick up on now for just 1 minute is how we can help you as an organisation meet some of those requirements and different ways that we can do that. And for those of you that aren't aware, Business in the Community is a membership organisation. We're a charitable organisation, so your membership is a charitable contribution. And in return, we try to help your organisation be responsible. And whenever we talk about responsible business, we talk about 2 or 3 key areas. We talk about people, planet, and place, what we call the 3 Ps. And you'll see great alignment here with these areas of interest and what Esther and Janet picked up on in their slides around the likes of well-being, for instance, is a big area that we'll pick up on with people, or trying to deliver zero carbon is a big area for our planet team. And to give you a sense of the way that we work, we have teams of experts in each of these areas around people, planet and place. Planet, we have a team that are focused on helping our member organisations ultimately reduce and minimise their environmental impacts and negative impacts as much as possible. They work with those organisations to help them understand what their current emissions are, but also then develop plans to help them reach net zero at whatever time they deem to be correct. They also do a lot of work around biodiversity, for instance. So the team there are helping our members and helping businesses across the province implement a whole series of environmental initiatives that help work towards zero carbon in different shapes and forms. Under people, we do a lot of work with our member organisations to help them think about how they support their current workforce in terms of ensuring that they are a diverse and inclusive employer, but then also what they do to help ensure the well-being of that workforce, make sure that they're healthy and engaged. So we do a lot of work in and around the current workforce, but also work with businesses to help them talk about and think about their future workforce. How do they engage with unemployed people, people that are in harder to reach communities across the province, and how can they do that in a constructive way that makes sense for those people, but also for their business? And again, we have a wealth of programs in that area. And then finally, in place, we have for over 30 years been matching businesses and communities, matching different skills and time and resources with the communities that need them the most. So we'll have lots of organisations that come to us to say, we really would like to spend X number of hours focusing on a specific issue in the community. And that is something that we help broker as part of our membership with our organisations. We do a whole wealth of things, and what we'll do as part of the follow-up with this is share a more detailed deck that starts to break down some of the ways in which we work. But I just wanted to remind those of you that do work with us the types of things that we do and how you can flex your membership with us to ensure that you meet those additional social value requirements that are now coming through as part of the contracts with many organisations. Greta, over to you just to talk a wee bit more specifically on that social value support piece.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So this is the last slide that we'll cover off today, but as you all know, social value is an expanding area of interest, and there's a lot that you can already be doing with us in terms of your membership. So if you have any questions around the programs that Lisa talked about today, or figuring out how to flex your membership a little bit better, do reach out to your relationship manager. There's already a lot there that we could be doing together. But there's also a lot of programs that you can avail of as a member that do fit the social value themes. And we're also working on other workshops and mentoring sessions that expand on social value and social impact. For example, mapping out your existing activities to a specific contract. As a requirement, we would need an environmental policy. You already have this. It would be ready to tick into that. But also helping you identify what specific social impact you would want to address. What is most important to you? What's most important to your employees or your customers or your suppliers? What is most material to the organization, and what type of impact do you really want to address? Maybe not specifically to a contract, but just social impact in general. And then finally, we could also work on, designing social value projects specifically for contracts, working with you to try to find the right partners and stakeholders. As Lisa mentioned, we have long-standing relationships with the right partners to deliver a lot of these programs. So it's really just sitting down with you and working through a specific bid or the delivery of a project. But we really want to hear from you, and really want to hear if there's anything else that you could be working with us, or if there's anything else that you would need help with. We do want to hear your feedback on this. And then unfortunately, we don't have much time for question and answer today, but do send your emails over. Lisa, the next 2 slides will have my email on it. Just the next slide. Yeah, so the next slide, it's just my email, send it over. We'll reach out to the speakers and see if they can answer any questions before next week. But you'll see both Esther, Janet, and Andrea on the next session as well, where we will be talking about resources. And then we will also be joined by Jude at version 1, who will be discussing their current projects. They've been doing a lot of fantastic work up until then. So hopefully we'll have more time for questions and answer then as well. And then we'll also have the final session on the 5th of December with Atkins Realis. But thank you all for coming over today, and thank you very much for both the SAB and BCC for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed the webinar and learned a lot about social value. Great. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.